I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. It was a Tuesday evening in March, and the spring rain was tapping against the windows of our apartment, the one we'd picked out together. With the exposed brick walls and the tiny balcony where we'd planted herbs that never quite grew right, Elliot was sitting across from me at our dining table, the one we'd found at that estate sale in Brooklyn Heights. And he was twirling his wine glass the way he always did when he had something important to say. "Brooklyn," he started, and I knew from the way he said my name slow, deliberate, like he was already exhausted by having to explain something to me that this wasn't going to be about weekend plans or whose turn it was to call the super about the leaky faucet. "We need to talk about us." 4 years. That's how long we'd been together. 4 years of Sunday brunches and Thursday night trivia at the bar down the street. 4 years of meeting each other's families, of vacations to places we'd pinned on a shared Pinterest board, and of slowly intertwining our lives until I couldn't remember which books on our shelves were originally mine and which were his. Our wedding was supposed to be in 6 months. The venue was booked. My dress was hanging in my mother's closet, wrapped in plastic like some kind of pristine promise of happiness. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued, setting down his glass with that precise little clink that meant he'd rehearsed this. "About us, about the wedding, about everything. And I need to be honest with you. My heart was already falling. That sick elevator drop feeling you get when you know bad news is coming but your brain hasn't quite caught up yet." I watched his mouth move, those lips I'd kissed goodbye every morning for the past 2 years we'd lived together. And somehow I already knew what was coming even before the words materialized in the air between us. "You're not worthy of being my wife." The words hung there, sharp and clear, like icicles. Not "I'm not ready for marriage." Not "we want different things." Not even "I met someone else." Just a simple, brutal assessment of my worth or lack thereof. "I'm sorry, what?" I heard myself say, though my voice sounded strange, like it was coming from somewhere outside my body. He sighed, that particular sigh he'd perfected over the years, the one that meant I was being slow to understand something obvious. "Look, Brooklyn, you're a nice girl. You're pretty enough, I suppose. But let's be realistic here. My career is taking off. I'm making senior partner next year. I need someone who can match that, someone who can be an asset at firm events, someone with ambition." "I have ambition," I said quietly. I was a graphic designer at a small firm, working my way up, building my portfolio. It wasn't Wall Street, but it was mine. Drawing logos for coffee shops isn't exactly ambition, Brooklyn. And let's not even talk about your family. Your mother still thinks it's appropriate to bring potato salad in a Tupperware to a cocktail party. Your father wears those ridiculous Hawaiian shirts to every event. These things matter in my world. My world, not our world, his world. The strange thing about devastating moments is how normal everything else remains. The refrigerator was still humming. Someone's music was filtering through the walls from the apartment next door, that couple who always played jazz on Tuesday nights. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Sarah about bridesmaid dress fittings. The world was continuing to spin even as mine had stopped. "So what are you saying exactly?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice was. "You're calling off the wedding?" Elliot ran his hand through his hair, that perfectly styled hair that cost more to maintain than my monthly subway card. "I think it's for the best. I've actually been thinking about this for months, if I'm being honest. Remember the Gardner Foundation gala last month? When you didn't know which fork to use for the fish course? Or when you laughed too loudly at Richard's joke about the merger? These things, they add up, Brooklyn. Months." He'd been thinking about this for months while I'd been tasting wedding cakes and arguing with my mother about centerpieces. While I'd been writing my vows in a little notebook I kept hidden in my nightstand drawer, trying to find the perfect words to express how he'd changed my life. "You criticized me for weeks about that gala," I said slowly. "My dress was too bright. My shoes were too low. I talked too much to the catering staff." "Exactly my point. You don't naturally fit into that world. I need someone who does." I looked at him then. Really looked at him. This man I'd thought I'd loved. His perfectly pressed shirt, his manicured hands, the way he held himself like he was always posing for an invisible camera. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this way, and I'd just been too in love to see it? "What about everything we planned?" I asked. "The apartment, the wedding, the future we talked about?" "Plans change," he said simply, as if we were discussing dinner reservations rather than our entire life together. "I'll handle the wedding cancellations. You can keep the apartment until the lease is up in 3 months. That should give you enough time to find something else. I've already found a sublet downtown, closer to the office. Already found a sublet." The premeditation of it all hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been picking out flowers that morning, he'd been apartment hunting. While I'd been sending him texts about our honeymoon plans, he'd been planning his exit strategy. "Is there someone else?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "No," he said, but his eyes flickered to his phone. "This is about us. About you, really. About what's best for both of us in the long run. You'll thank me for this someday, Brooklyn. You'll find someone more suitable for you. Someone who appreciates your simplicity." Simplicity. Like I was a quaint little cottage when he decided he needed a Manhattan penthouse. I stood up then, my legs surprisingly steady. There's this moment in every ending where you have a choice. You can crumble, or you can surprise yourself. As I looked at Elliot sitting there, waiting for me to cry or beg or make a scene that he could later recount to his colleagues as evidence of my unsuitability, something unexpected happened. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh or a hysterical laugh, but a genuine, deep laugh that seemed to bubble up from somewhere I didn't know existed. Elliot's carefully composed expression cracked, just for a moment, showing confusion and maybe even a flash of concern. "Brooklyn?" he said, and for the first time that evening, he sounded uncertain. "You know what, Elliot? You're absolutely right," I said, still smiling. "I'm not worthy of being your wife. Because your wife would have to spend her life making herself smaller to make you feel bigger. Your wife would have to apologize for laughing too loud and loving too much and bringing potato salad to cocktail parties. Your wife would have to pretend that your cruelty is sophistication and your insecurity is standards." I walked to our bedroom, his bedroom now, I supposed, and pulled out the suitcase from the closet. The one we'd bought for our honeymoon trip to Greece. I started throwing things in randomly. Underwear, my favorite sweater, the journal I wrote in every morning, the photo of my parents from their 40th anniversary. "What are you doing?" Elliot had followed me, standing in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed in his own bedroom anymore. "Leaving," I said simply. "Tonight. You can have the apartment. You can have the furniture. You can have the life you've so carefully curated. But you don't get to have me sit across from you for another dinner while you explain why I'm not enough. Don't be dramatic, Brooklyn. It's late. Where would you even go? That's no longer your concern, is it?" I zipped up the suitcase and grabbed my purse, my phone, my laptop bag. The rest could wait. The rest was just stuff, and stuff could be replaced. He followed me to the door, and I could see him struggling to regain control of the situation. This wasn't how he'd scripted it. I was supposed to cry, to promise to change, to beg for another chance. Instead, I was leaving him standing in the apartment we'd shared, surrounded by the ghost of a future that would never exist. "Brooklyn." "Wait." I turned at the door, my hand on the knob. "You know what the saddest part is, Elliot? I would have loved you through anything. Through job losses and family dramas and failed dreams and bad hair days and every imperfect moment that makes a life real. But you're so terrified of being seen as ordinary that you can't even see how extraordinary that kind of love is." I didn't wait for his response. I walked out, down the 3 flights of stairs, out onto the Brooklyn street where it was still raining. I stood there for a moment, suitcase in hand, rain soaking through my clothes, the clothes he'd always said were too casual, too colorful, too much like me. Sarah picked me up 20 minutes later, having received my SOS text. She took one look at my soaked form and didn't ask questions, just popped the trunk for my suitcase and handed me the coffee she'd picked up on the way. Real friendship is knowing when to talk and when to just drive. I stayed with Sarah for the first week, sleeping on her couch and staring at her ceiling at 3 a.m., replaying every moment of the past 4 years, looking for signs I'd missed. They were everywhere, of course. The way he'd introduced me at parties. "This is Brooklyn. She does some design work. Not my girlfriend, or the love of my life, or even just Brooklyn." Always with that qualifier, that diminishment. The way he'd slowly isolated me from my friends, always having some critical comment after we'd see them. "Does Marcus always drink that much?" Sarah seems pretty bitter about being single, doesn't she? "Your college friends are sweet, but don't you think you've outgrown them?" The way he'd made me feel grateful for his attention, as if he was doing me a favor by choosing me. "You're lucky, I don't mind that you're not really into fitness," he'd say, pinching my waist. Or, "Most guys would be bothered by how close you are with your family, but I'm patient." My mother called on day 3. Word had gotten out. "Honey," Elliot's mother called me. "She says there's been a misunderstanding. She says Elliot is willing to go to couples counseling." "There's no misunderstanding, Mom. He told me I wasn't worthy of being his wife." There was a long pause. Then my mother, who had never said a bad word about anyone in her life, who brought potato salad to cocktail parties and loved with her whole heart, said, "Well then, he's right. You're not worthy of being his wife. You're worthy of so much more." I went back to the apartment while Elliot was at work to get my things. I'd texted him, I was coming, and he'd texted back, "Key is under the mat. Not let's talk or I miss you or I'm sorry." Just logistics, like I was the cable guy coming to disconnect service. The apartment felt different without the possibility of us in it. Smaller somehow, and shabbier. I could see the stain on the carpet we'd always meant to get cleaned, the crack in the bathroom mirror we'd always meant to replace, all those some days that would never come. I packed methodically, taking only what was mine. The books with my name written on the inside covers, the mugs my grandmother had left me. The plant from my office that Elliot had always complained was dying, it wasn't dying, it was a succulent. It was supposed to look like that. I left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a note. "Sell this and buy yourself some happiness. You're going to need it." The first month was the hardest. Not because I missed Elliot, though. There were moments when I'd reach for my phone to text him about something funny I'd seen, before remembering, but because I had to figure out who I was without him. For 4 years, so many of my decisions had been filtered through the lens of what Elliot would think, what Elliot would approve of, what would make Elliot proud. I found a studio apartment in Queens, small but bright, with windows that faced east and caught the morning sun. I painted one wall yellow, a color Elliot had always said was too aggressive for living spaces. I hung up all the art I'd created that he'd relegated to the closet. I bought plates from a thrift store, mismatched and perfect. Work became my sanctuary. Without Elliot's constant commentary about my little job, I threw myself into projects with new energy. I stayed late not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I was excited about what I was creating. My boss noticed. My colleagues noticed. 3 months after Elliot told me I lacked ambition, I was promoted to senior designer. I started therapy. Something Elliot had always said was for people who couldn't handle their own problems. Dr. Martinez, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and killer shoes, helped me untangle the web of criticism and control that had become my normal. He told you that your laugh was too loud? She asked during one session. All the time. He said it was unrefined. What joy did he have in his life that was so refined he couldn't appreciate the sound of genuine happiness? That question stayed with me for weeks. I reconnected with old friends, the ones Elliot had deemed unworthy of our time. Marcus, who did enjoy a beer or 3 but who also volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend. Sarah, who was single by choice and living her best life. My college friends, who welcomed me back like I'd never left, even though I'd missed 2 years of birthdays and graduations and random Tuesday night gatherings. 6 months after the breakup, I ran into Elliot's colleague Richard at a coffee shop, the same Richard whose merger joke I'd apparently laughed at too loudly. He looked uncomfortable seeing me, shifting his weight and glancing at the door. Brooklyn, hi, I heard about. Well, I'm sorry about what happened. Don't be, I said, and meant it. It was the best thing that could have happened to me. He looked surprised. Really? Because Elliot said he stopped himself. What did Elliot say? Richard hesitated, then seemed to decide he owed me this much. He's been telling everyone that you had a nervous breakdown, that the wedding pressure got to you and you just lost it. Left in the middle of the night, no explanation. I should have been angry. I should have been humiliated. Instead, I felt something like pity. Elliot couldn't even own his own cruelty. He had to rewrite the story to make himself the victim. Me, the unstable ex who couldn't handle the pressure of being with someone so magnificent. That's interesting, I said to Richard. Is that why he's been texting me asking to get coffee? Richard's eyes widened. He has? I pulled out my phone, showing him the string of messages I'd never responded to. Brooklyn, we should talk about how you left things. I'm willing to forgive the way you walked out. You're being childish by not responding. I heard about your promotion. I always knew you had potential. Do you ever think about us? Richard looked uncomfortable. I should go. Richard, I said as he turned to leave. Next time you see Elliot, tell him Brooklyn says hi. Tell him she's doing amazing. Tell him her laugh is louder than ever. Life has a funny way of opening doors once you stop standing in your own way. My promotion led to bigger projects, which led to recognition in the industry. I won a design award for a campaign I'd created for a nonprofit, something Elliot would have called charity work with that dismissive tone of his. I started dating again, casually at first. There was James, the bartender who made me laugh until my sides hurt. There was David, the teacher who read poetry and didn't own a suit. There was Miguel, the chef who cooked me elaborate dinners and didn't care that I sometimes ate dessert first. None of them stuck. But they all reminded me that there were men in the world who could appreciate joy, who didn't need to dim someone else's light to feel bright. It was at a work event, almost a year after the breakup, that I met Wyatt. I was presenting a design proposal to potential clients, feeling confident and alive in a way I hadn't in years. He was part of the client team, taking notes in the back, occasionally smiling at my jokes, the ones I didn't measure or moderate, just let fly. After the presentation, he approached me. That was brilliant, he said simply. Your passion for the project really comes through. Also, I loved the joke about the corporate Memphis art style. I've been trying to explain why I hate it for years, and you just nailed it in one sentence. We talked for an hour after the meeting ended, about design and art and why people in dystopian movies always wear beige. He asked for my number, but not in that aggressive, entitled way I'd become wary of. He said, I'd love to continue this conversation sometime, if you're interested. No pressure if you're not. I know mixing business and personal can be complicated. Our first date was at a museum, then dinner at a tiny Thai place he loved. He laughed at my jokes, really laughed. Not the polite chuckle Elliot used to give me before explaining why the joke didn't quite land. When I got sauce on my dress, he didn't look embarrassed. He just handed me his napkin and shared a story about the time he'd split his pants at his brother's wedding. 3 months into dating Wyatt, I finally told him about Elliot. We were cooking dinner together in his apartment, actually cooking together, not me watching while he performed culinary superiority like Elliot used to do. He told you that you weren't worthy? Wyatt stopped chopping vegetables, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. What kind of person says that to someone they're supposed to love? Someone who doesn't understand what love is, I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came. He thought love was possession, control, perfectionism. He thought it was about finding someone who made you look good rather than someone who made you feel good. Wyatt put down his knife and pulled me into a hug. For what it's worth, he said into my hair. His loss is my incredible gain. But even if I wasn't here, even if you'd never met me, You need to know that you are worthy of everything good in this world just by being yourself. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a photo of Elliot with a woman blonde, wearing pearls, holding a champagne glass with practiced elegance. The text read, "Saw your ex at the Blackstone Gallery opening with his new girlfriend. Thought you should know. Concerned friend." I showed Wyatt the message. "Does this upset you?" he asked carefully. I looked at the photo again. The woman Daisy, I would later learn her name was, looked like everything Elliot had wanted me to be. Polished, posed, perfect. She was looking at the camera with a smile that didn't reach her eyes while Elliot had his hand possessively on her lower back, that same proprietary gesture he used to use with me. "No," I said, and realized I meant it. It makes me sad for her. Wyatt made breakfast the next morning, pancakes with blueberries, too much syrup, served on mismatched plates. We ate in bed, getting crumbs on the sheets, laughing about nothing. It was the kind of morning Elliot would have found undignified. It was perfect. But Elliot wasn't done with me, apparently. The texts started again, more frequent now. "I see you're dating someone new. Hope you're not rushing into something. Daisy and I are very happy. She understands my world. Your new boyfriend looks nice. Very middle class." I didn't respond to any of them, but I didn't block him either. Some part of me wanted to watch him spiral, to see him grasping for my attention that he'd once taken for granted. Meanwhile, my life with Wyatt deepened and grew. He met my parents, showing up to Sunday dinner in jeans and a t-shirt, bringing my mother flowers and my father a six-pack of craft beer. He helped my dad fix the garage door and complimented my mother's potato salad with genuine enthusiasm. "This is incredible, Mrs. Martinez. Would you share the recipe? My mom would love this." 18 months after Elliot had told me I wasn't worthy, Wyatt proposed. Not at some elaborate public spectacle designed to impress onlookers, but on a random Thursday evening while we were doing a puzzle on the living room floor. He just looked up at me, holding a piece of sky that didn't seem to fit anywhere, and said, "I want to do puzzles with you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" The ring wasn't a massive diamond designed to signal wealth. It was his grandmother's Art Deco sapphire, unique and beautiful and full of history. When I said yes, he didn't post it on social media immediately. Instead, we called our families, ordered Chinese food, and spent the night planning a future that felt real and attainable and ours. The news must have reached Elliot somehow because the texts escalated. "Engaged already? That's quite fast, don't you think? I hope you're not making the same mistakes with him. Does he know about us? About what we had? I'm worried about you, Brooklyn. This isn't like you." That last one made me laugh out loud. Not like me? This was exactly like me, the me that had existed before Elliot had convinced me I needed to be someone else. Our wedding planning was everything my first engagement hadn't been. We tasted cakes and actually ate them, not worried about fitting into clothes. We picked a venue because we loved it, not because it would impress anyone. My mother was in charge of appetizers, and yes, there would be potato salad. My father would wear whatever Hawaiian shirt he wanted. 2 weeks before the wedding, Daisy left Elliot. I heard about it through the grapevine, apparently. She'd met someone else at a charity gala, someone even wealthier, even more connected. She'd traded up, leaving Elliot the way he'd planned to leave me, with surgical precision and no looking back. The text from Elliot became desperate. "You made a mistake. You were right about everything. Please, just meet me for coffee. One coffee. I know you're getting married soon. It's not too late to reconsider. Brooklyn, please." On my wedding day, as Sarah was helping me into my dress, a simple, elegant thing that I'd chosen because I loved it, not because it would photograph well, my phone rang. Elliot's name appeared on the screen. "Don't answer it," Sarah said. "I wasn't going to," I said, but we both watched as it rang through to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. "Give me the phone," Sarah said. And when I handed it to her, she answered on the fourth call. "Hello, Elliot. This is Sarah. You remember me, Brooklyn's bitter single friend? Well, I'm calling from Brooklyn's bridal suite where she's about to marry a man who thinks she hung the moon. So whatever you have to say, you can say it to me, and I promise I won't pass it along." I could hear Elliot's voice through the phone, tinny and desperate, but couldn't make out the words. Sarah's face went through a series of expressions: disgust, amusement, pity, before she finally interrupted him. "Elliot, listen to me very carefully. Brooklyn is about to walk down the aisle to marry someone who celebrates her laugh instead of criticizing it. Someone who brings potato salad to fancy parties because her mom made it. Someone who knows her worth and multiplies it every single day. You had your chance. You had 4 years of chances, and you threw them all away because you were too insecure to love someone who shined. So no, I won't tell her you called. I won't tell her you're sorry. I won't tell her you've changed. Because frankly, Elliot, she doesn't care anymore. And that's the best revenge she could have ever gotten. She simply doesn't care." She hung up and blocked his number on my phone. "There," she said, smoothing my veil. "Now you can get married in peace." The ceremony was perfect in its imperfection. My father did wear a Hawaiian shirt, the brightest one he owned. My mother cried happy tears that smudged her mascara. Wyatt's nephew dropped the rings, and we all laughed as we scrambled to find them. When Wyatt said his vows, his voice cracked with emotion, and he didn't try to hide it or compose himself. He just let himself feel it all, right there in front of everyone. "Brooklyn," he said. "You came into my life like a sunrise gradually, then all at once. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone who fits into your world perfectly. It's about building a world together, one mismatched plate, one loud laugh, one imperfect moment at a time. I promise to always see your light, to never ask you to dim it, and to spend my life basking in its glow." When we kissed, the room erupted in cheers. Real, genuine, too loud cheers that would have made Elliot cringe. It was perfect. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in Greece, the same trip I'd once planned with Elliot, but entirely different. We missed our tour of the Acropolis because we were too busy watching the sunrise from our balcony. We ate at tiny tavernas where no one spoke English and the wine came in unmarked bottles. We laughed, we loved, we lived without measuring ourselves against anyone else's standards. When we returned, I had 177 missed calls from Elliot. 177. Wyatt saw me staring at my phone in disbelief. "Is that?" "Yeah." He took my phone gently, looked at the call log, then did something I didn't expect. He called Elliot back. "Hello, Elliot. This is Wyatt, Brooklyn's husband." He emphasized the last word just slightly. "I understand you've been trying to reach my wife. She's here, but she's busy still glowing from our honeymoon, actually. I'm going to suggest something, man to man. Stop calling, stop texting, stop trying to insert yourself into a life you chose to leave. Brooklyn has moved on. She's happy, she's loved, she's valued. Everything you couldn't do for her, I consider it an honor to do every single day. So this is goodbye, Elliot. Don't contact her again." He hung up and handed me back my phone. "You okay?" he asked. "More than okay," I said, and meant it. 6 months later, we had a housewarming party for the apartment we'd bought together. Nothing fancy, just friends and family crammed into our space, spilling out onto the fire escape, music too loud, laughter even louder. My parents were there, my dad grilling on the tiny balcony, my mom distributing potato salad like it was Holy Communion. Sarah was there with her new boyfriend, a guy who appreciated her strength instead of being threatened by it. Even Richard was there. We'd become friends after he'd left Elliot's firm, tired of the toxic culture. I was in the kitchen, refilling the sangria pitcher, when there was a knock at the door. Wyatt was out on the balcony, so I answered it myself. It was Elliot. He looked different. Older, though it had only been 2 years since that night in our old apartment. His suit was impeccable as always, but there was something hollow in his eyes. Something desperate in the way he held himself. "Hello, Brooklyn. Elliot, you can't be here. I know, I wanted to see you. To explain. To apologize properly. You had my number for 2 years. You could have apologized any time." "I know, but actually, you know what? Come in." I stepped aside, and his face lit up with hope. "Come see what you missed out on." I led him through the party, through the crowd of people who loved me, who celebrated me, who never once asked me to be smaller or quieter or less. He saw my awards from work displayed on the bookshelf. He saw the photos from my wedding covering one entire wall. He saw Wyatt laughing with my father, both of them in ridiculous Hawaiian shirts. He saw my mother teaching Sarah's boyfriend her secret potato salad recipe. He saw a life full of all the things he'd thought were beneath him. "You were right," he said quietly. "That night, when you left, everything you said was right. I was so afraid of being ordinary that I couldn't see how extraordinary you were. I know," I said simply. "I loved you," he said. "I just didn't know how to do it right." "No, Elliot, you loved the idea of me. The potential you saw to mold me into something else. That's not love. That's just narcissism with a romantic soundtrack." Wyatt appeared then, 2 glasses of sangria in his hands. He gave one to me and looked at Elliot with curiosity but not hostility. "You must be Elliot. I've heard so much about you." Elliot flinched. "All bad, I'm sure." "No," Wyatt said thoughtfully. "Brooklyn tells me you taught her something valuable. You taught her what she didn't want in a partner. You taught her to never settle for someone who sees her as a project instead of a person. In a weird way, I should thank you. If you hadn't shown her what love isn't, she might not have recognized what love is when we met." The silence stretched between us, filled with the sounds of the party, of life happening around us but not including Elliot. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" Elliot asked me, one last desperate attempt. I looked at him, really looked at him for the last time. "No," I said. "I'm too busy living what is." He left after that, walking out of my apartment and my life for good. I heard later that he moved to Chicago, took a job at an even more prestigious firm, dated a series of appropriate women who never lasted more than a few months. Richard told me once that Elliot had gotten drunk at a company party and spent an hour talking about the one who got away. Richard hadn't had the heart to tell him that I wasn't the one who got away. He was the one who threw me back, not realizing he'd had gold in his hands until it was too late. But I don't think about Elliot much anymore. I'm too busy living my loud, imperfect, extraordinary life. Wyatt and I have been married 3 years now. We still do puzzles on the living room floor. We still eat too much syrup on our pancakes. We still laugh too loud at each other's jokes. My design firm is thriving. I started my own company last year, and yes, I do charity work designing for nonprofits that make a difference. Creating beauty for people who need it most. It's the most fulfilling work I've ever done. My parents come for dinner every Sunday, and my mother still brings potato salad. My father has gifted Wyatt 3 Hawaiian shirts so far, and Wyatt wears them with pride. Sarah is my business partner now, and we're killing it in ways Elliot's corporate world could never understand. Sometimes I pass by that old apartment in Brooklyn, the one with the exposed brick and the tiny balcony where the herbs never grew right. Someone else lives there now, creating their own story in those rooms. I hope it's a better story than the one that ended there. The other day, I was at a coffee shop when a young woman at the next table was crying into her phone. He says I'm too much, she was saying. Too emotional, too loud, too everything. After she hung up, I leaned over. Hey, I said gently. I couldn't help but overhear. Can I tell you something? Anyone who thinks you're too much isn't enough for you. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. How do you know? Because someone once told me I wasn't worthy of being his wife. And you know what? He was right. I wasn't worthy of being his wife, I was worthy of so much more. And so are you. I left her with my business card and a piece of advice. The right person won't ask you to be less. They'll love you for being more. As I walked home to my husband, to my loud, chaotic, beautiful life, I thought about that night in the rain 2 years ago, when I'd stood on a Brooklyn street with a suitcase and no plan, just the wild hope that there had to be something better than being told I wasn't enough. Turns out, there was. There was everything. The best revenge isn't living well to spite someone who hurt you. The best revenge is living so well that you forget they ever existed at all. It's building a life so full of joy and love and laughter that there's no room for old ghosts. It's becoming so completely yourself that you can't imagine ever having tried to be anything else. Elliot was wrong about one thing, though. He said I'd thank him someday. But I don't thank him. I nothing him, and that's the most powerful thing of all.